Sarah Martinez sat in her old car outside the mountain cabin. Her hands shook as she looked at the piece of paper again. The job posting was wrinkled from being folded and unfolded so many times. She had found it on the bulletin board at Joe's diner 3 days ago. Cabin cleaning position, good pay, call this number. That was all it said. But when she called, the man on the phone said he would pay $200 for 1 day of cleaning. Sarah could not believe it. She made less than that in a whole week at her other jobs. Sarah needed this job badly. She had 4 children at home and money was always tight. Very tight. Some nights she went to bed hungry so her kids could eat. She worked 3 different jobs, but it was never enough. The rent was due in 5 days and she was short by $150. She looked at herself in the car mirror. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore her cleanest jeans and a plain white t-shirt. She hoped she looked professional enough. Sarah had cleaned houses before, so she knew what to do. But this job felt different. The cabin was in a fancy area where rich people had vacation homes. Sarah took a deep breath and got out of her car. She grabbed her cleaning supplies from the back seat. The bucket was old and had a crack in it, but it still worked. Her cleaning rags were made from old towels that she had cut up. She could not afford to buy new cleaning supplies very often. The cabin was bigger than she expected. It was made of dark wood and had large windows. There was a wraparound porch with wooden chairs. It looked like something from a magazine. Sarah felt nervous as she walked up the steps to the front door. She knocked 3 times and waited. Her heart was beating fast. She heard footsteps inside and then the door opened. The man who answered was not what she expected. He was tall, with dark brown hair and kind blue eyes. He looked to be in his 30s, maybe a little older than her. He wore expensive-looking jeans and boots that probably cost more than Sarah made in a month. But there was something gentle about his face. "You must be Sarah," he said with a smile. "I'm Jake Harrison. Thank you for coming all the way up here." Sarah nodded. "Yes, sir. I'm here about the cleaning job." "Please, just call me Jake," he said. "Come on in. Let me show you around." Jake opened the door wider, and Sarah stepped inside. The cabin was even nicer inside than outside. There was a big stone fireplace and comfortable-looking furniture. The kitchen had granite counters and new appliances. Everything was clean already, which made Sarah wonder why he needed a cleaning lady. "The place isn't too messy," Jake said, as if reading her thoughts. "I just like to have it deep cleaned every few weeks. I spend a lot of time here, and I want it to feel fresh." Sarah nodded. She had cleaned for wealthy people before, and they often had strange requests. As long as they paid well, she did not ask questions. "What would you like me to focus on?" Sarah asked. Jake walked her through the cabin. There were 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, the main living area, and the kitchen. He explained that he wanted everything dusted, vacuumed, and wiped down. The bathrooms needed to be scrubbed, and the kitchen needed a deep clean. "Take your time," Jake said. "I'm not in a rush. I'll be working on my laptop in the study if you need anything." Sarah got to work right away. She always worked fast and did a good job. She had learned that happy customers sometimes gave tips or called her back for more work. She started in the kitchen, cleaning the stove and scrubbing the sink until it sparkled. As she worked, she could hear Jake typing on his computer in the other room. Sometimes he made phone calls. She tried not to listen, but she could tell he was talking about business. He used words like cattle and ranch and investment. Sarah wondered what kind of work he did. After 2 hours, Sarah had finished the kitchen and 1 bathroom. She was cleaning the living room when Jake came out of the study. "How's it going?" he asked. "Good," Sarah said. "I should be done in about 2 more hours." Jake nodded. "Can I get you something to drink? Water? Coffee?" Sarah paused her dusting. "Water would be nice, thank you." Jake brought her a glass of cold water. Sarah drank it quickly. She had been working hard and was thirsty. "You do good work," Jake said, looking around the kitchen. "Everything looks great." "Thank you," Sarah said. She felt proud when people noticed her work. Jake went back to his study and Sarah continued cleaning. She vacuumed all the carpets and mopped the wood floors. She dusted every surface and cleaned the windows until they were streak-free. In the bedrooms, She changed the sheets and fluffed the pillows. The work felt good. Sarah liked having something to do with her hands. It helped her stop worrying about money and bills and everything else that kept her awake at night. When she was cleaning, she could just focus on making things clean and nice. As she worked, Sarah hummed quietly to herself. It was a habit she had picked up over the years. Her daughter Emma always said it sounded like a lullaby. Sarah did not even realize she was doing it most of the time. When she finished cleaning, Sarah looked around the cabin one more time. Everything looked perfect. She packed up her supplies and went to find Jake. He was still in the study, but he closed his laptop when she knocked on the doorframe. "All done," Sarah said. Jake walked through the cabin with her, checking her work. Sarah held her breath, hoping he would be satisfied. "This is amazing," Jake said. "You did a fantastic job. Everything looks perfect." Sarah felt relief wash over her. "Thank you." Jake pulled out his wallet and counted out 10 $20 bills. Sarah's eyes widened. She had never been paid so much for one day of work. "Same time next week?" Jake asked. Sarah almost could not believe it. "You want me to come back?" "If you're available," Jake said. "I meant what I said about having it cleaned regularly." "Yes," Sarah said quickly. "I can come back next week." Jake smiled. "Great. I'll see you then." Sarah walked back to her car with the money in her pocket. $200. It was more money than she had seen in months. She could pay part of the rent and buy groceries. Maybe even get Sophia the new shoes she needed for school. As she drove down the mountain, Sarah felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe things were finally going to get better. Jake Harrison stood on his cabin porch and watched Sarah's old car disappear down the mountain road. He had not expected to feel this way after hiring a cleaning lady. There was something about Sarah that stayed in his mind long after she left. Jake was not used to being around people who worked so hard for so little. At 34, he owned one of the largest cattle ranches in the state. The Harrison Ranch had been in his family for 3 generations, but Jake had made it bigger and more successful than ever before. He was worth millions of dollars, but most people did not know that when they met him. Jake preferred his mountain cabin to his big ranch house. Up here, he could think and work without people bothering him all the time. He had bought the cabin 5 years ago as a place to escape. The ranch was always busy with workers and visitors and people who wanted something from him. But the cabin was peaceful. He went back inside and looked around. Sarah had done an incredible job. Everything was spotless. But it was more than that. Jake could not explain it. But the cabin felt different now. It felt warmer somehow. Maybe it was because Sarah had hummed while she worked. Jake had heard her soft voice drifting through the cabin, and it had made him smile. Jake had inherited the ranch when his father died 9 years ago. He was only 25 then, and many people thought he was too young to run such a big operation. But Jake had worked on the ranch since he was a boy. He knew cattle and land and business. He proved everyone wrong by making the ranch more profitable than it had ever been. But success had come with a price. Jake worked all the time. He had no time for relationships or friends. His last girlfriend had left him 2 years ago, saying he cared more about his cows than he did about her. Maybe she was right. Jake had not tried to date anyone since then. The next week, Jake found himself looking forward to Sarah's visit. He told himself it was because he liked having a clean cabin, but deep down, he knew it was more than that. There was something calming about Sarah's presence. When Sarah arrived on Tuesday morning, Jake noticed things he had missed the week before. Her jeans had small holes near the knees. Her shoes were worn down at the heels. The bucket she carried had a crack that she had fixed with tape. These small details told a story that Jake was beginning to understand. "Good morning," Sarah said with a shy smile. "Where would you like me to start today?" "Wherever you think is best," Jake said. "You know what you're doing better than I do." Sarah nodded and got to work. Jake went to his study, but he found it hard to concentrate on his computer. He kept listening to Sarah move around the cabin. She worked quietly and efficiently, just like the week before. After an hour, Jake made coffee and brought a cup to Sarah. She was cleaning the bathroom, scrubbing the shower with careful attention to detail. "I thought you might like some coffee," Jake said. Sarah looked surprised. "Oh, you don't need to do that?" "I know I don't need to," Jake said, "but I wanted to." Sarah accepted the coffee gratefully. "Thank you. This is really kind." Jake noticed that Sarah's hands were rough from hard work. Her fingernails were short and practical. These were the hands of someone who worked with them every day. Jake thought about his own hands, which were soft from sitting at a desk most of the time. "How long have you been cleaning houses?" Jake asked. "About 3 years," Sarah said. "I started after." She paused as if she had said too much. "I started when I needed extra money." Jake sensed there was more to the story, but he did not push. "Do you have other jobs too?" Sarah nodded. "I work at Joe's Diner in the mornings, and I do some sewing at night." Jake was amazed. 3 jobs. When did she sleep? When did she have time for herself? "That sounds like a lot of work," Jake said. Sarah shrugged. "You do what you have to do." There was something in her voice that made Jake's chest feel tight. He had never had to worry about money. Even before he inherited the ranch, his family had always been comfortable. He could not imagine working 3 jobs just to get by. Over the next few weeks, Jake began to look forward to Tuesdays more and more. He started timing his work so he would be finished when Sarah was done cleaning. Sometimes they would talk for a few minutes before she left. Jake learned small things about Sarah. She was 28 years old. She had grown up on a small farm outside of town. She liked to read when she had time, which was not often. She was always polite and grateful, but Jake could see tiredness in her eyes. One Tuesday, Jake noticed that Sarah looked paler than usual. She moved more slowly and took longer breaks. When she was cleaning the kitchen, she had to sit down for a minute. "Are you feeling okay?" Jake asked. "I'm fine," Sarah said quickly. "Just a little tired." But Jake could see that it was more than that. Sarah looked like she had not been eating enough. Her clothes seemed looser than before. Jake wanted to help, but he did not know how to offer without offending her. The next week, Jake decided to try something. He made sandwiches and put them on the kitchen counter before Sarah arrived. "I made too much lunch," he told her when she got there. "Would you like a sandwich?" Sarah looked at the food like it was a treasure. "Are you sure?" "Please," Jake said. "I hate to waste food." Sarah ate the sandwich slowly as if she was trying to make it last. Jake pretended to work on his laptop while she ate, but he was really watching her. When was the last time she had had a proper meal? Jake started having extra food every time Sarah came to clean. Sometimes it was sandwiches. Sometimes it was soup or leftover pizza. Sarah always accepted gratefully, and Jake could see that the food made a difference. She had more energy and looked healthier. One Tuesday, Sarah was late. Jake waited for an hour, then 2 hours. Finally, at noon, her old car pulled up the driveway. Sarah got out and hurried to the door. She looked upset. "I'm so sorry," she said. "My car broke down and I had to wait for my neighbor to give me a ride. I can work late to make up the time." "Don't worry about it," Jake said. "Is your car okay?" Sarah's face fell. "The mechanic says it needs a new transmission. I don't have that kind of money right now." Jake wanted to offer to pay for the car repair, but he knew Sarah would not accept. She had too much pride. Instead, he said, "If you need a ride up here next week, I can come pick you up." "Oh no," Sarah said quickly. "I couldn't ask you to do that." "You're not asking," Jake said. "I'm offering." Sarah looked like she might cry. "You're very kind, but I'll figure something out." Jake watched Sarah work that day and noticed something new. She kept checking the clock. At exactly 3 o'clock, she stopped working even though she was not completely finished. "I have to go," she said. "I'm sorry the bathroom isn't done yet." "That's fine," Jake said. "But why do you always leave at 3? Sarah paused. "I have to pick up." She stopped herself. "I have somewhere I need to be." Jake paid her and watched her get into her neighbor's car. As they drove away, Jake realized how little he actually knew about Sarah's life. She worked 3 jobs, had car trouble, and always left at exactly 3 o'clock. She was careful about what she said and never talked about her personal life. But Jake was starting to care about Sarah in a way that surprised him. She was different from anyone he had ever known. She was strong and hardworking and kind. She never complained, even when things were obviously difficult for her. Jake found himself thinking about Sarah even when she was not at the cabin. He wondered what her life was like when she was not working. Where did she live? What did she do in the evenings? And why did she always seem to be in a hurry to leave? As he sat in his study that evening, Jake made a decision. He was going to find out more about Sarah Martinez, not because he wanted to pry into her business, but because he was starting to care about what happened to her. And something told him that Sarah needed help, even if she was too proud to ask for it. Sarah hurried down the mountain road in her neighbor's car, watching the clock on the dashboard. It was already 3:15, and she was supposed to be at the school by 3:30. Emma would be waiting for her, and Sarah hated being late for her daughter. "Thank you so much for the ride, Mrs. Chen," Sarah said to the elderly woman driving. "No problem, dear," Mrs. Chen replied. "But you really need to get that car fixed." Sarah nodded, but she did not tell Mrs. Chen that fixing. The car would cost $800 she did not have. The mechanic had been kind enough to explain what was wrong, but kind words would not pay for a new transmission. Mrs. Chen dropped Sarah off at the elementary school just as the children were coming out. Sarah spotted Emma right away. At 10 years old, Emma was responsible and mature beyond her years. She was watching for Sarah while keeping an eye on her 3 younger siblings. "Mom," called Sophia, the youngest at 5 years old. She ran towards Sarah with her backpack bouncing behind her. The twins, Marcus and Miguel, were 8 years old and full of energy. They were talking excitedly about something that had happened at school. Emma walked over more slowly, and Sarah could see the worry in her daughter's eyes. "Is everything okay, Mom?" Emma asked quietly. "You look tired." Sarah smiled and hugged her oldest daughter. Emma always noticed too much. Sometimes Sarah worried that Emma was growing up too fast, taking care of everyone else instead of just being a kid. "I'm fine, sweetheart," Sarah said. "Just a long day at work." The family walked home together. Their apartment was only 6 blocks from the school, which was good because Sarah could not always afford gas for the car. The twins ran ahead, playing and laughing. Sophia held Sarah's hand and chattered about her day. Emma walked beside them, quiet and thoughtful. Their apartment building was old and needed repairs. The paint was peeling and some of the windows had cracks. But it was clean inside, and Sarah had worked hard to make it feel like home. She had painted the walls herself and bought furniture from garage sales and thrift stores. The apartment had 2 bedrooms. Sarah slept in the living room on a fold-out couch so the children could have the bedrooms. Emma had her own small room, and the 3 younger children shared the larger bedroom with bunk beds. "Did you finish your homework?" Sarah asked as they climbed the stairs to their apartment. "Yes," Emma said, "and I helped Marcus and Miguel with theirs." "What about you, Sophia?" Sarah asked. "I don't have homework," Sophia said proudly, "but I practiced writing my letters." Inside the apartment, Sarah looked around quickly. Everything was neat and organized. Emma had been busy while Sarah was at work. The breakfast dishes were washed and put away. The children's school clothes were folded on their beds. "Emma, you don't have to do all the housework," Sarah said. "You should have time to play." Emma shrugged. "I like helping. Besides, Marcus and Miguel made a mess with their art project, so I cleaned it up." Sarah felt guilty. Emma was only 10, but she acted like a second mother to her siblings. It was not fair, but Sarah needed the help. With 3 jobs and 4 children, there were not enough hours in the day. "I'm hungry," Sophia announced. Sarah went to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. There was not much food left. Some milk, a few eggs, bread, and peanut butter. She would need to go grocery shopping tomorrow, but that meant spending money she was trying to save for the rent. "Peanut butter sandwiches for dinner?" Sarah asked. The children did not complain. They were used to simple meals. Sarah made the sandwiches and poured glasses of milk for everyone. As they ate, the children told her about their day. Marcus had scored a goal in soccer during recess. Miguel had gotten an A on his spelling test. Sophia had made a new friend named Jessica. Emma had been chosen to read aloud in class because she was the best reader. Sarah listened and smiled, but part of her mind was thinking about money. The rent was due in 3 days. She had most of it now thanks to the job cleaning Jake's cabin, but she was still short $50. Maybe she could pick up an extra shift at the diner. After dinner, Sarah helped the children with homework, while doing her own work. She had brought home some sewing from Mrs. Patterson, who paid her to hem curtains and fix clothes. Sarah sat at the kitchen table with her sewing basket, while Emma read to Sophia and the twins worked on math problems. "Mom," Marcus said, looking up from his homework. "Tommy's dad is taking him camping this weekend. Can we go camping sometime?" Sarah's heart hurt. The children rarely asked for things they could not have, but sometimes they forgot that their life was different from other kids' lives. "Maybe someday," Sarah said gently, "when things are less busy." Marcus nodded, but Sarah could see disappointment in his face. She wished she could give her children all the things other kids had: family vacations, new clothes, toys, activities. But just keeping a roof over their heads and food on the table took everything she had. Later that evening, after the children were in bed, Sarah sat on her fold-out couch and looked at her bills. Rent, electricity, phone, groceries, gas for the car when it was working. The numbers never seemed to add up right. No matter how hard she worked, there was always more month than money. Sarah thought about Jake Harrison and his mountain cabin. He seemed like a nice man, but she wondered why he lived alone in such a big place. He always had good food and nice clothes. His truck in the driveway looked expensive and new. It must be nice not to worry about money. Sarah had been careful not to tell Jake too much about her personal life. Rich people sometimes thought poor people were looking for handouts. Sarah had her pride. She worked hard for everything she had, and she did not want charity. But sometimes she wondered what it would be like to have enough money to relax, to not worry about every dollar. The next Tuesday, Sarah borrowed Mrs. Chen's car again to drive to Jake's cabin. Her own car was still at the mechanic's shop waiting for repairs she could not afford. Sarah felt embarrassed about having to ask for rides, but Mrs. Chen was kind and understood. When Sarah arrived at the cabin, Jake was waiting on the porch with a cup of coffee. "Good morning," he said with a smile. "How are you doing?" "Fine, thank you," Sarah said. She noticed that Jake looked at Mrs. Chen's car but did not ask questions. As Sarah worked that day, she found herself paying more attention to Jake. He was different from other wealthy people she had met. He was polite to everyone, including her. He did not act like he was better than other people, and he always made sure she had something to eat. While Sarah was dusting the living room, Jake came out of his study. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Sarah stopped dusting and looked at him. "Sure. You always leave at exactly 3 o'clock. Is there somewhere important you need to be?" Sarah hesitated. She had been working for Jake for over a month now, and he had been nothing but kind to her. Maybe it would not hurt to tell him a little bit about her life. "I have to pick up my children from school," she said. Jake's face changed. "You have children?" "4 of them," Sarah said, then immediately worried that she had said too much. Some employers did not like hiring people with children. They thought it made them unreliable, but Jake just smiled. "4 kids. That must keep you busy." "It does," Sarah said. "But they're good kids." "I'm sure they are," Jake said. "How old are they?" Sarah found herself telling Jake about Emma and the twins and little Sophia. She told him how Emma helped with the younger children, and how the twins were good at sports, and how Sophia was learning to read. Jake listened with interest, asking questions, and smiling at Sarah's stories. He seemed genuinely curious about her children, which surprised Sarah. Most people without kids did not want to hear about other people's children. "It sounds like you're doing a great job raising them," Jake said. Sarah felt warmth spread through her chest. It was rare for anyone to tell her she was doing a good job at anything. Most days she felt like she was barely keeping her head above water. As the weeks went by, Sarah began to look forward to her conversations with Jake. He was easy to talk to, and he never made her feel bad about her situation. Sometimes he would ask about the children, and Sarah would tell him funny stories about things they had said or done. Jake seemed lonely to Sarah. He lived in the beautiful cabin all by himself, with no family or friends visiting. Sarah wondered why someone so nice and successful was all alone. But she did not ask personal questions. That would not be appropriate. One Tuesday, Sarah arrived to find Jake looking upset. He was pacing on the porch when Mrs. Chen dropped her off. "Is everything okay?" Sarah asked. Jake ran his hand through his hair. "I just got some bad news about the ranch. Nothing for you to worry about, but it's been a stressful morning." Sarah did not know what to say. She was not used to her employers sharing their problems with her, but she could see that Jake was really bothered by whatever had happened. "I'm sorry," she said. "I hope things work out." Jake smiled at her, and some of the tension left his face. "Thank you. I'm sure they will." As Sarah worked that day, she found herself humming more than usual. It was something she did when she was trying to make someone feel better. At home, she would hum while she cooked dinner if one of the children had a bad day. It seemed to help them relax. When she was done cleaning, Jake walked her to the door as usual. "Sarah," he said, "thank you for today." Jake sat in his truck outside the mechanic's shop on Thursday morning. He had driven into town to pick up supplies for the ranch, but he could not stop thinking about Sarah. She had missed work on Tuesday, and that was not like her. In the 2 months she had been cleaning his cabin, Sarah had never missed a day. When Jake called her number, it went straight to voicemail. Her voice sounded tired even on the recording. "Hi, you've reached Sarah. Please leave a message and I'll call you back as soon as I can." Jake left a message asking if everything was okay, but Sarah had not called back. Now he was worried. What if something had happened to her? What if one of her children was sick? He looked through the window of the mechanic's shop and saw a familiar car. It was the old sedan that Sarah drove, the one with the cracked windshield and the dent in the side. Jake had only seen it once, the first day she came to work for him. Since then, she had been getting rides from her neighbor. Jake got out of his truck and walked into the shop. "Can I help you?" asked the mechanic, i.e., middle-aged man with grease on his hands. "I was wondering about that car," Jake said, pointing to Sarah's sedan. "The woman who owns it, is she okay?" The mechanic looked at him suspiciously. "You know Sarah?" "She works for me," Jake said. "She was supposed to come to work on Tuesday, but she didn't show up. I'm worried about her." The mechanic's face softened. "Sarah's a good woman, works harder than anyone I know. But that car needs a new transmission, and she can't afford to fix it. Been sitting here for 3 weeks now." "How much would it cost to repair?" Jake asked. $800, the mechanic said. "I told her I could do it for $750, but that's still more than she's got." Jake thought about the $800. It was nothing to him. He spent more than that on dinner when he took clients to expensive restaurants. But for Sarah, it might as well have been $8,000. If someone wanted to pay for the repairs, "Could you fix it today?" Jake asked. The mechanic looked surprised. "Sure, I could have it done by this afternoon, but who's going to pay for it?" "I am," Jake said, pulling out his wallet. "I don't think Sarah would like that," the mechanic said. "She's proud. Doesn't take charity from anyone." Jake understood. He had seen Sarah's pride. She worked hard for everything she had and never asked for help. "What if you told her someone paid for it anonymously?" Jake suggested. "Like a good Samaritan who heard about her situation." The mechanic smiled. "I could do that. Sarah deserves some good luck for once." Jake paid for the repairs and asked the mechanic to call Sarah when the car was ready. Then he drove back to his cabin feeling better than he had in days. At least now Sarah would have reliable transportation. But Jake's worry about Sarah did not go away. Where did she live? What was her life like when she was not working? Jake realized he knew very little about the woman who had become such an important part of his week. That evening, Jake made a decision that surprised even him. He was going to drive by Sarah's address. He had it on the employment paperwork she had filled out when he first hired her. Jake told himself he just wanted to make sure she was okay. He was not trying to spy on her. Sarah's address led Jake to a part of town he rarely visited. The houses were small and close together. Many of them needed repairs. The apartment building, where Sarah lived, was 3 stories tall and looked like it had been built in the 1960s. The parking lot had potholes, and some of the windows were boarded up. Jake parked across the street and looked up at the building. According to the paperwork, Sarah lived in apartment 2B. Jake could see lights in several second-floor windows, but he did not know which one was hers. As Jake sat in his truck, he saw children playing in the courtyard behind the building. A chain-link fence surrounded a small playground with old equipment. Some of the swings had broken chains and the slide had rust stains on it. Then Jake saw her. Sarah came out of the building carrying a laundry basket. She looked tired, and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore faded jeans and a t-shirt with holes in it. This was not the polite professional woman who cleaned his cabin. This was Sarah at home, with all her walls down. Jake watched as Sarah walked to a laundromat across the street. She struggled with the heavy basket and had to stop twice to rest. Jake wanted to get out and help her, but he knew that would be wrong. Sarah had not invited him into her personal life. While Sarah was at the laundromat, Jake saw 4 children come out of the apartment building. The oldest was a girl with long dark hair who looked responsible beyond her years. That had to be Emma. 2 boys who looked like twins ran around the playground full of energy, and a little girl with pigtails followed them, trying to keep up. Jake watched the children play and felt his heart tighten. The playground was not safe. The equipment was old and broken, but the children seemed happy anyway. Emma kept a careful eye on her younger siblings, making sure they did not get hurt. When Sarah came back from the laundromat, the children ran to help her carry the clean clothes. Jake could see them all talking and laughing together. Even from a distance, he could tell they were close. But Jake also noticed things that worried him. Sarah's apartment was on the 2nd floor, but Jake could see that some of the stairs leading up to it were cracked. The building's front door did not close properly, and when a man came out of the building, Jake could hear loud music and shouting from inside. This was not a safe place for a woman and 4 children to live, but Jake knew it was probably all Sarah could afford. The rent here was likely much cheaper than in the nicer parts of town. Jake drove home with his mind spinning. He had thought he understood Sarah's situation, but seeing where she lived made it real in a way that shocked him. Sarah was not just working hard to get by. She was working hard to survive. The next day, the mechanic called Sarah to tell her that her car was ready. Jake had asked him to say that someone had heard about her situation and wanted to help. When Sarah came to pick up the car, she cried right there in the mechanic's shop. "I don't understand," she told the mechanic. "Who would do something like this?" "Sometimes good things happen to good people," the mechanic said. "Don't question it, just be grateful." Sarah was grateful. She was also confused and a little suspicious. Things like this did not happen to her, but her car was fixed and she could not afford to ask too many questions. On Tuesday, Sarah drove her own car to Jake's cabin for the first time in weeks. She was early and seemed more relaxed than Jake had seen her in a long time. "Good morning," she said with a bigger smile than usual. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" "It is," Jake agreed. "You seem happy today." "My car got fixed," Sarah said. "Someone paid for the repairs anonymously. Can you believe that? A stranger helped me out of nowhere." Jake smiled. "That's wonderful. There are still good people in the world." "There really are," Sarah said. "I was starting to lose faith, but this gives me hope." As Sarah worked that day, Jake thought about what he had seen at her apartment building. 4 children living in a 2-bedroom apartment in a rough neighborhood. Sarah sleeping on a couch so her kids could have beds. Working 3 jobs just to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. Jake had been born into wealth. He had never worried about where his next meal would come from or whether he could pay rent. His biggest problems were business decisions and investment strategies. Sarah's problems were about survival. But what impressed Jake most was that Sarah had never complained. She had never asked him for anything or even hinted that she needed help. She worked hard, took care of her children, and somehow found the strength to be kind and cheerful even when her world was falling apart. When Sarah finished cleaning that day, Jake walked her to her car. "Sarah," he said, "I hope you don't mind me asking, but how long have you been on your own with the children?" Sarah paused with her hand on the car door. "About 2 years," she said quietly. "Their father left when things got hard. He said he was not ready to be responsible for a family." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. What kind of man would abandon his children? "I'm sorry," Jake said. "That must have been very difficult." Sarah shrugged. "We're better off without him. The kids are happier now even though money is tight. We take care of each other." As Jake watched Sarah drive away, he made another decision. He was going to find a way to help her. Not just with small things like fixing her car, but in a bigger way. Sarah and her children deserved better than they had, and Jake was in a position to change their lives. He just had to figure out how to do it without hurting Sarah's pride. Because one thing Jake had learned about Sarah Martinez was that her dignity was just as important to her as her children's welfare, and Jake respected her too much to take that away from her. Jake could not stop thinking about what he had seen at Sarah's apartment building. Over the next few days, he found himself driving by the neighborhood again, not to spy on Sarah, but to understand her world better. Each time he went there, he learned something new that made him worry more. On Wednesday evening, Jake parked across from the laundromat and watched people come and go. Many of them looked like they were struggling just like Sarah. Mothers with young children, elderly people carrying heavy bags, teenagers who should have been in school but were working instead. Jake talked to Mrs. Rodriguez, the woman who owned the small grocery store on the corner. She was friendly and seemed to know everyone in the neighborhood. "You're asking about Sarah Martinez?" Mrs. Rodriguez said. "That poor girl works herself to death. I see her here all the time, counting her money carefully before she buys anything. Sometimes she puts things back because she doesn't have enough." "How long has she been living here?" Jake asked. "About 2 years," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "She moved here after her husband left. Before that, they lived in a nicer place. But when he took off, she couldn't afford the rent anymore." Jake learned that Sarah's ex-husband, Carlos, had been a construction worker. When work got slow and money got tight, he started drinking. Instead of looking for solutions, he blamed Sarah for their problems. One day he just packed his clothes and left. He never sent money for the children or even called to see how they were doing. "Sarah never complains," Mrs. Rodriguez continued. "But I can see how hard it is for her. She buys the cheapest food, and I know she skips meals so her kids can eat. Sometimes I give her extra discounts, but she's proud. She doesn't like taking help." Jake also talked to Mr. Johnson, who managed the apartment building. Mr. Johnson was a kind man who tried to help his tenants when he could. "Sarah is the best tenant I have," Mr. Johnson said. "She keeps her place clean, her kids are well behaved, and she always pays her rent on time. But I can see the stress wearing on her. She looks tired all the time." Mr. Johnson told Jake that Sarah's apartment was small and had problems. The heater did not work well in winter, and there was a leak in the ceiling that made water spots on the wall. The building was not in the best condition, but the rent was cheap, which was why Sarah could afford it. "I fix what I can," Mr. Johnson said. "But the owner doesn't want to spend money on major repairs." Sarah never complains, though. She just deals with whatever problems come up. Jake learned that Sarah painted the walls herself to cover up stains and cracks. She had bought paint from the discount store and spent her weekend making the apartment look better for her children. When the heater broke last winter, Sarah and the kids slept in the living room with extra blankets because that room stayed warmer. At Joe's Diner, Jake talked to Marge, the owner. Marge was a tough woman in her 60s who had run the diner for 20 years. "Sarah's my best waitress," Marge said. "She works the morning shift from 5 to 11. She's always on time, never calls in sick, and the customers love her, but I can tell she's exhausted. She works here, then goes to clean houses, then stays up late doing sewing work." Marge told Jake that Sarah often worked extra shifts when someone else called in sick. She never said no, even when she was obviously tired. "I try to feed her when she's here," Marge said. "I'll make extra eggs or bacon and tell her it was a mistake order. She's too thin. I don't think she eats enough." Jake also learned about Sarah's sewing work. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who lived near the diner, hired Sarah to hem curtains and fix clothes. Sarah would pick up the work after her shift at the diner and return it the next day. "She does beautiful work," Mrs. Patterson said. "Very careful and precise, but she charges too little. I try to pay her more than she asks, but she won't take it. She has so much pride." Mrs. Patterson told Jake that Sarah sometimes brought Sophia with her when she picked up sewing work. The little girl would sit quietly while Sarah and Mrs. Patterson talked about what needed to be done. "That little girl is so well behaved," Mrs. Patterson said. "All of Sarah's children are. You can tell she's raising them right, even with all her struggles." Jake learned that Emma, Sarah's oldest daughter, was an excellent student but had to miss some school activities because there was no money for fees or uniforms. The twins, Marcus and Miguel, wanted to play soccer, but Sarah could not afford the registration costs. Sophia needed new shoes, but Sarah was waiting until payday to buy them. At the elementary school, Jake talked to Mrs. Williams, who taught Emma's class. "Emma is one of my best students," Mrs. Williams said. "She's smart and responsible, but I worry about her. She acts more like a mother than a 10-year-old. She takes care of her younger siblings and helps her mother too much." Mrs. Williams told Jake that Emma sometimes fell asleep in class because she stayed up late helping with homework and housework. The school had a free lunch program and all 4 of Sarah's children qualified. Sometimes Mrs. Williams would give Emma extra snacks to take home. "I can tell the family doesn't have much," Mrs. Williams said, "but Sarah comes to every parent, conference and school event. She's involved in her children's education even though she's so busy." Jake also learned about the neighborhood itself. It was not a dangerous area, but it was not safe either. There were break-ins sometimes, and the police did not patrol very often. The playground where Sarah's children played was old and needed repairs. The city had promised to fix it for 2 years, but nothing had been done. Mrs. Chen, Sarah's neighbor who sometimes gave her rides, told Jake more about Sarah's daily routine. "She leaves for work at 4:30 in the morning," Mrs. Chen said. "I hear her car start every day. She comes home at noon, then leaves again to clean houses. In the evening, she's always cooking or cleaning or helping the children with homework. I don't know when she sleeps." Mrs. Chen was worried about Sarah, too. She had noticed that Sarah was getting thinner and more tired. "She never asks for help," Mrs. Chen said. "But sometimes I cook extra food and bring it over. I tell her it's leftovers, but really I'm just worried about those children getting enough to eat." Jake spent a week learning about Sarah's life, and every new piece of information made him more determined to help. Sarah was working as hard as any person could work, but it was still not enough. She was fighting a battle she could not win alone. The most heartbreaking thing Jake learned was that Sarah used to have dreams. Marge at the diner told him that Sarah had wanted to go back to school to become a nurse. She had been good at taking care of people and had hoped to make a better life for her family. But when her husband left, all those dreams had to go on hold, Marge said. Now she's just trying to survive day by day. It's not fair. She's a good person who deserves better. Jake also learned that Sarah's children were well loved and well cared for, despite their circumstances. Emma was protective of her younger siblings. The twins were energetic and happy. Sophia was sweet and curious about everything. They were good kids who deserved stability and opportunities. On Friday night, Jake sat in his cabin and thought about everything he had learned. Sarah was not just poor. She was trapped. No matter how hard she worked, she could not get ahead. Unexpected expenses like the car repair could destroy months of careful saving. She had no safety net, no family to help, no way to take risks that might lead to a better life. But Sarah had something that impressed Jake more than any wealthy person he had ever met. She had dignity, strength, and an unshakable love for her children. She had not let her circumstances make her bitter or angry. She worked hard, treated people with kindness, and somehow found the energy to be a good mother. Jake made a decision that night. He was going to change Sarah's life, but he had to do it carefully. Sarah's pride was important to her, and Jake respected that. He could not just give her money or offer charity. He had to find a way to help that would allow Sarah to keep her dignity. It would not be easy, but Jake was determined. Sarah and her children deserved a chance at a better life, and Jake was going to make sure they got it. The next Tuesday, when Sarah came to clean his cabin, Jake looked at her with new eyes. She was still professional and polite, but now Jake could see the exhaustion she tried to hide. He could see the worry lines around her eyes and the way she moved a little slower than before. But he also saw her strength and grace. Despite everything she was dealing with, Sarah still hummed while she worked. She still smiled when she talked about her children. She still treated Jake with warmth and respect. Jake knew that he was falling in love with this remarkable woman. But more than that, he knew that he wanted to be part of her life and her children's lives. He wanted to help them, protect them, and give them the opportunities they deserved. Now he just had to figure out how to make that happen without losing Sarah's trust or hurting her pride. Because Jake had learned that Sarah Martinez was not just a woman who cleaned his cabin. She was a woman worth fighting for. Jake spent the weekend pacing around his cabin, trying to figure out how to help Sarah without insulting her pride. He had thought of dozens of ideas, but most of them felt wrong. Just giving her money would embarrass her. Offering charity would hurt her feelings. Jake needed something that would feel like a real opportunity, not a handout. On Sunday evening, Jake was walking around his ranch when the answer came to him. He stopped in front of the small cottage that sat about half a mile from his main house. The cottage had been built for the ranch foreman, but Jake's current foreman preferred to live in town with his family. The cottage had been empty for 2 years. The cottage was perfect. It had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, and a living room. It was much bigger than Sarah's apartment and in much better condition. There was a yard where the children could play safely, and the ranch had good security. The cottage, even, had a view of the mountains. But Jake needed more than just a place for Sarah to live. He needed a job that would allow her to quit her other work and still support her family. As he looked at the cottage, Jake realized he did have work that needed to be done. Jake's ranch was huge, with multiple buildings and facilities. He had been thinking about hiring someone to manage the day-to-day maintenance and administration, someone to coordinate with repair crews, handle supply orders, manage schedules, and keep everything organized. Jake had been doing this work himself, but it took time away from the bigger business decisions. The job would pay well, enough for Sarah to support her family without working 3 jobs. It would include health insurance, which Jake knew Sarah did not have, and it would come with the cottage as part of the compensation package. Jake spent Monday working out the details. He talked to his accountant and lawyer to make sure everything was legal and fair. He researched what other property managers were paid in the area. He wanted to offer Sarah a real job with real responsibilities and real benefits. On Tuesday morning, Jake was more nervous than he had ever been in any business meeting. Sarah's answer would change both of their lives. When Sarah arrived for work, she seemed more tired than usual. Jake noticed that her jeans had a new hole near the knee, and her shoes were wearing thin at the heels. "Good morning," Sarah said with her usual polite smile. "Where would you like me to start today?" "Actually," Jake said, "I was hoping we could talk first. Could you sit down for a minute?" Sarah looked surprised but sat down at the kitchen table. Jake sat across from her, suddenly unsure how to begin. "Sarah," he said, "I have a business proposition for you." Sarah's face became guarded. "What kind of proposition?" Jake took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about expanding my ranch operations, and I need someone to help manage the property. Someone to coordinate maintenance, handle schedules, order supplies, and basically keep everything running smoothly." Sarah listened but did not say anything. "It would be a full-time job," Jake continued. "The salary would be $60,000 a year, plus health insurance for you and your children. And the job would come with housing. There's a cottage on the ranch that you and your family could live in." Sarah stared at him for a long moment. "I don't understand." "I'm offering you a job," Jake said. "A real job with real responsibilities. I think you'd be good at it." "But I don't know anything about managing property," Sarah said. "You know how to organize, clean, and take care of things," Jake said. "You're responsible and hardworking. Those are the most important qualifications. I can teach you the rest." Sarah was quiet for a long time. Jake could see her thinking, trying to figure out if this was real or some kind of joke. "Why me?" she finally asked. Jake had prepared for this question. "Because in the past 3 months I've watched you work. You pay attention to details. You care about doing things right. You're reliable and honest. Those are exactly the qualities I need." $60,000? Sarah repeated. "Plus benefits," Jake said. "And the cottage is fully furnished. 3 bedrooms, so the children would have their own space." Sarah put her head in her hands. "This doesn't make sense. People don't just offer jobs like this to cleaning ladies." Jake leaned forward. "Sarah, I'm not offering this because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because I think you're the right person for the job. I've been thinking about this for weeks." "What exactly would I have to do?" Sarah asked. Jake explained the job in detail. Sarah would coordinate with repair crews when things needed to be fixed. She would order supplies for the ranch operations. She would schedule maintenance for all the buildings and equipment. She would handle some of the administrative work that Jake currently did himself. "I travel a lot for business," Jake said. "I need someone here who can take care of problems when they come up, someone I can trust to make good decisions." Sarah was still looking skeptical. "And you think I can do all that?" "I know you can," Jake said. "You've been managing a household with 4 children while working 3 jobs. You're already doing harder work than what I'm offering." "What about the cleaning?" Sarah asked. "Would I still clean your cabin?" "The cottage and my cabin would be part of your responsibilities," Jake said. "But you'd have help. I can hire other people for the heavy cleaning." Sarah stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the mountains and Jake could see her shoulders shaking slightly. "Sarah," Jake said gently. "Are you okay?" When Sarah turned around, there were tears in her eyes. "This is too good to be true. Things like this don't happen to people like me." Jake stood up and walked over to her. "What do you mean, people like you?" "Single mothers with no education who work as cleaning ladies," Sarah said. "We don't get offered jobs with health insurance and houses and $60,000 a year." "Maybe you should," Jake said quietly. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I need to think about this. This would change everything for me and my children." "I know," Jake said. "Take all the time you need. But Sarah, I want you to know that this offer is real. I'm not trying to trick you or take advantage of you. I genuinely think you'd be good at this job." "Can I see the cottage?" Sarah asked. "Of course," Jake said. "Would you like to see it now?" They drove to the cottage in Jake's truck. Sarah was quiet during the short ride, staring out the window at the ranch. Jake could see her taking in everything, the well-maintained fences, the healthy cattle, the clean facilities. The cottage was even nicer than Jake had remembered. It had wood floors and large windows that let in lots of natural light. The kitchen was modern and fully equipped. The 3 bedrooms were spacious and the master bedroom had its own bathroom. "The children would love this," Sarah said softly, looking at the 2nd and 3rd bedrooms. "They've never had their own rooms before." Outside, there was a yard with a swing set and a garden area. The view of the mountains was spectacular. It was peaceful and safe, nothing like the crowded apartment building where Sarah currently lived. "The ranch has its own security system," Jake said. "And I live just half a mile away, so you'd never be completely isolated." As they walked back to the truck, Sarah was quiet again. Jake could see her mind working, trying to process everything she had seen and heard. "Jake," she said, finally, "can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. Why do you live alone? You have this beautiful ranch and all this space, but it's just you." Jake had not expected this question, but he found himself wanting to answer honestly. "I've been focused on work for so long that I forgot to build a personal life," he said. "I thought success would be enough, but it's not. This place feels empty sometimes." Sarah nodded like she understood. "I've been so focused on survival that I forgot to dream about anything better." When they got back to the cabin, Sarah gathered her cleaning supplies. "I need to talk to my children," she said. "This decision affects all of us." "Of course," Jake said. Take as much time as you need. Jake, Sarah said as she reached the door, thank you. Even if I say no, thank you for believing I could do something more than clean houses. After Sarah left, Jake sat on his porch and waited. He had done everything he could. Now it was up to Sarah to decide if she was ready to take a chance on a new life. Jake thought about the conversation they had just had. Sarah was right that things like this did not usually happen to people in her situation. But maybe they should happen more often. Maybe there were a lot of people like Sarah who just needed someone to give them an opportunity. That evening, Jake's phone rang. It was Sarah. Jake, she said, and he could hear children's voices in the background. We've talked about it, all of us, and we want to say yes. We want to try. Jake smiled bigger than he had in years. I'm glad. When can you start? Is next Monday too soon? Sarah asked. Next Monday is perfect, Jake said. After he hung up the phone, Jake looked around his cabin. Soon Sarah and her children would be living just down the road. The ranch would be full of life and laughter, and Jake would have the chance to be part of a real family. For the first time in years, Jake felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Moving day came faster than Sarah had expected. She stood in her old apartment, looking at the boxes and bags that held everything her family owned. It was not much, but it represented 2 years of struggle and survival. Now they were leaving, it all behind for a chance at something better. Emma helped pack the last of the dishes while the twins carried their clothes to the car. Sophia clutched her favorite stuffed animal and asked for the 10th time if they were really going to live on a ranch with horses. Yes, sweetheart, Sarah said, kneeling down to Sophia's level. We're going to have a new home. Will there be room for all of us? Sophia asked. There will be room for everyone, Sarah promised. You'll even have your own bedroom. Sophia's eyes got wide. She had never had her own room before. Mrs. Chen came over to say goodbye. The elderly woman had tears in her eyes as she hugged each of the children. You take care of your mama, she told Emma, and you remember to visit me sometimes. We will, Emma promised. Mr. Johnson, the building manager, helped carry the heavier boxes downstairs. I'm happy for you, Sarah, he said. You deserve this chance. Even Mrs. Rodriguez from the corner store came to see them off. She pressed a bag of candy into Sophia's hands and told Sarah, don't forget where you came from, but don't look back either. Jake arrived with a truck to help move their belongings. He had offered to hire professional movers, but Sarah insisted she could handle it herself. She was still getting used to the idea that someone wanted to help her. The drive to the ranch took 20 minutes. The children pressed their faces against the car windows, watching the scenery change from crowded buildings to open fields and rolling hills. When they turned through the gates of the Harrison Ranch, Marcus and Miguel let out whoops of excitement. Look at all the space, Marcus said. Are those real cowboys? Miguel asked, pointing to ranch hands working with cattle in the distance. Jake led them to the cottage, and Sarah held her breath as she opened the front door. In the week since she had accepted the job, she had worried that maybe she had imagined how nice the cottage was. But it was even better than she remembered. The children ran through the rooms, their voices echoing with excitement. Emma found her bedroom and stood in the doorway, amazed that she would not have to share it with anyone. The twins discovered that their room had bunk beds and started arguing about who would sleep on top. Sophia found her room and immediately began planning where to put her toys. Mom, come look, Sophia called. I can see horses from my window. Sarah joined her youngest daughter at the bedroom window. In the pasture beyond the cottage, several horses grazed peacefully. It was like something from a dream. Jake helped them carry in their belongings, and Sarah was embarrassed by how little they had. Their furniture was old and mismatched. Their clothes fit in just a few boxes. But Jake acted like he was helping them move treasures. The cottage is already furnished, Jake reminded her. You can use your furniture too, or store it if you prefer what's here. Sarah looked at the comfortable sofas and sturdy dining table that came with the cottage. Everything was clean and well made, much nicer than anything she could afford. May can try mixing some of our things with what's here, Sarah decided. She wanted the cottage to feel like home, not like they were visitors. That first evening, Sarah cooked dinner in her new kitchen while the children explored the yard. The kitchen had everything she needed: a big refrigerator, a stove that worked properly, and plenty of cabinet space. Sarah had never cooked in such a nice kitchen before. Jake came by around dinner time to see how they were settling in. "How is everyone doing?" he asked. "We're doing great," Emma said. "This is the nicest place we've ever lived." "I'm glad you like it," Jake said. "Sarah, tomorrow I'll show you around the ranch and explain your new responsibilities. But tonight, just enjoy your new home." After dinner, Sarah sat on the cottage porch while the children played in the yard. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky pink and orange. Sarah could not remember the last time she had just sat and watched a sunset. "Mom," Emma said, coming to sit beside her. "Are you happy?" Sarah put her arm around her. "Daughter." "I'm very happy. Are you?" Emma nodded. "I like Mr. Jake. He's nice to us, and he looks at you like you're special." Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "He's been very kind to all of us." "Do you think we'll stay here for a long time?" Emma asked. "I hope so," Sarah said. "But we have to work hard and prove that we belong here." The next morning, Sarah woke up in her own bedroom for the first time in 2 years. She had been sleeping on the living room couch in their old apartment so the children could have the bedrooms. Now she had privacy and space and a comfortable bed. Jake picked her up at 8 o'clock to begin her first day of work. He spent the morning showing her around the ranch facilities. There were barns, equipment sheds, offices, and worker housing. Everything was well maintained and organized. "Your main job will be coordinating all of this," Jake explained. "When something needs repair, you'll contact the right people to fix it. When we need supplies, you'll handle the ordering. You'll also help me with scheduling and paperwork." Sarah felt overwhelmed at first. It seemed like so much responsibility. But as Jake explained each task, she realized that most of it was similar to managing a household, just on a larger scale. "What if I make mistakes?" Sarah asked. "Everyone makes mistakes when they're learning," Jake said. "I'll help you until you feel confident." They spent the afternoon in the ranch office where Jake showed Sarah the computer systems and filing procedures. Sarah had basic computer skills from high school, but she was nervous about using the ranch's sophisticated software. "Don't worry," Jake said. "I'll teach you everything step by step." At 3 o'clock, Sarah left to pick up the children from their new school. The elementary school in the ranch area was much smaller than their old school, with newer facilities and smaller class sizes. The children were excited when she picked them up. "My teacher is really nice," Sophia announced, "and there's a library with so many books." "The playground has new equipment," Marcus added, "and they have a soccer team." "Can we sign up for soccer?" Miguel asked hopefully. Sarah hesitated. In their old life, activities like soccer were luxuries they could not afford. But now, with her new job and steady income, maybe things could be different. "We'll see," Sarah said. "Let me talk to Mr. Jake about it." That evening, Jake came by to check on them again. The children were doing homework at the dining room table and Sarah was starting dinner. "How was your first day?" Jake asked. "Good," Sarah said. "A little overwhelming, but good. I think I can learn this job." "I know you can," Jake said. "You're already more organized than I am." "Jake," Sarah said, "the boys want to play soccer at their new school. Is that something we could afford now?" Jake smiled. "Sarah, you have a good job with a good salary. You can afford soccer registration. You can afford a lot of things you couldn't before." That night, after the children were in bed, Sarah sat in her living room and looked around. Just 1 week ago, she had been sleeping on a couch in a cramped apartment working 3 jobs just to survive. Now she had a real home, a real job, and real hope for the future. Over the next few weeks, Sarah settled into her new routine. She learned the ranch operations quickly and proved to be exactly what Jake had hoped for. She was organized, efficient, and took initiative to solve problems before they became bigger issues. The children thrived in their new environment. Emma joined the school choir and made new friends. The twins signed up for soccer and discovered they were good at it. Sophia loved having her own room and started inviting classmates over to play. Sarah watched her children bloom and felt grateful every day for the chance Jake had given them. But she also noticed something else happening. Jake had started spending more time at the cottage, often staying for dinner or helping the children with projects. At first, Sarah thought he was just checking on her work performance. But gradually, she realized that Jake enjoyed being around her family. He helped the twins practice soccer in the yard. He read bedtime stories to Sophia. He talked to Emma about her school projects, and Sarah found herself looking forward to Jake's visits. After years of handling everything alone, it was nice to have someone to share the daily moments with, someone who cared about her children's happiness and success. One evening in late fall, after the children were asleep, Sarah and Jake sat on the cottage porch drinking coffee. The air was crisp, and they could see stars beginning to appear in the clear sky. "Sarah," Jake said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy here? Really happy? Not just grateful?" Sarah thought about the question. "I'm happier than I've been in a long time. The children are thriving, and I feel like I'm actually good at this job. For the first time in years, I'm not worried about money or whether we'll have a place to live." "I'm glad," Jake said. "You all belong here." Sarah looked at Jake in the dim porch light. "What about you? Are you happier?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "Yes," he said finally. "This place feels like a real home now. I didn't realize how lonely I was until you and the children arrived." Sarah felt something warm and hopeful stir in her chest. Maybe this new beginning was just the start of something even better. Maybe she and her children had not just found a new home. Maybe they had found a new family. 6 months after moving to the ranch, Sarah stood in her kitchen making breakfast and smiled at the sounds of her family getting ready for the day. Emma was helping Sophia find her backpack. The twins were arguing about whose turn it was to feed the chickens they had convinced Jake to let them raise. These were the sounds of a happy home. Sarah had never imagined her life could be like this. She had a job she loved, children who were thriving, and a beautiful place to call home. But more than that, she had something she had not dared to hope, for she was falling in love. It had happened slowly, so gradually that Sarah almost did not notice at first. Jake had become part of their daily routine. He helped with homework, attended soccer games, and fixed broken toys. He was patient with the children and kind to Sarah. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped being just her employer and had become something much more important. But Sarah was scared to believe it was real. Jake was a millionaire rancher who could have any woman he wanted. Sarah was a single mother with 4 children and no money of her own. It seemed impossible that someone like Jake could truly love someone like her. Jake, meanwhile, was having his own struggles with love. He had never been around children before, but Sarah's kids had stolen his heart completely. Emma's quiet wisdom reminded him of Sarah. The twins' energy and enthusiasm made him laugh every day, and Sophia had wrapped him around her little finger from the moment she started calling him Uncle Jake. But it was Sarah who had changed his life completely. Jake had been successful in business, but he had never known what it felt like to come home to a family. He had never experienced the joy of watching children grow and learn. He had never had someone who cared about his day or worried about his happiness. Sarah made everything better. She organized his life, managed his ranch, and brought warmth to his world. But more than that, she made him want to be a better man. Jake found himself thinking about the future in ways he never had before. The change in their relationship started on a cold winter evening in February. Sarah had been sick, with the flu for 3 days, and Jake had been taking care of the children. He picked them up from school, helped with homework, and made simple dinners. On the 3rd evening, Jake was trying to help Sophia with a bath when the little girl started crying. "I want my mama," Sophia sobbed. "She always sings to me in the bath." Jake felt helpless. He did not know what song Sarah sang or how to comfort a crying 5-year-old. "What does Mama sing?" Jake asked gently. Sophia sniffled. "She sings the song about the sunshine. It makes me feel better when I'm scared." Jake did not know the song, so he made up his own lullaby about sunshine and rainbows. His voice was rough and uncertain, but Sophia stopped crying and listened. When Sarah finally felt well enough to get out of bed, she found Jake reading bedtime stories to all 4 children in the living room. They were cuddled around him on the couch, and Sophia had fallen asleep against his shoulder. "Thank you," Sarah whispered from the doorway. Jake looked up and saw her watching them. Something passed between them in that moment. A recognition that this felt right. They felt like a real family. A few weeks later, Jake was working in his study when Emma knocked on the door. "Mr. Jake," she said. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, Emma. Come in." Emma sat down across from his desk, looking very serious for a 10-year-old. "Do you love my mom?" she asked. Jake was surprised by the direct question. "That's a very personal question, Emma." "I know," Emma said. "But I need to know. Because if you're just being nice to us because you feel sorry for us, that's okay. But if you really love my mom, then I have something to tell you." Jake put down his pen and gave Emma his full attention. "What do you want to tell me?" "My mom loves you too," Emma said. "She doesn't think I notice, but I see how she looks at you, and she's happier than she's been since before my dad left. She smiles more and worries less." Jake felt his heart start beating faster. "How do you feel about that, Emma?" Emma smiled. "I think it's great. You make my mom happy, and you're good to all of us. The twins already think of you like a dad, and Sophia told me yesterday that she wishes you were her real daddy." "What about you?" Jake asked. "How do you feel about it?" Emma was quiet for a moment. "I remember my real dad. He wasn't very nice to my mom, especially at the end. He made her cry a lot. But you make her laugh. You help her instead of making things harder. I think you'd be a good dad for us." That evening, Jake could not stop thinking about his conversation with Emma. The children wanted him to be part of their family. Sarah loved him, according to Emma, and Jake knew he loved all of them more than he had ever loved anything in his life. But Jake was still afraid. What if Sarah only felt grateful to him? What if she thought she had to love him because he had given her a job and a home? Jake did not want Sarah to feel obligated to him. The answer came on a warm spring evening in May. Sarah was working late in the ranch office, trying to finish some paperwork before the weekend. Jake found her there at 9 o'clock, still typing. On the computer. "Sarah," he said, "it's late. The paperwork can wait until Monday." Sarah looked up surprised. "Oh, I didn't realize what time it was. I wanted to get this finished." "You work too hard," Jake said. "Even in your new job, you're always pushing yourself." Sarah saved her work and turned off the computer. "I guess old habits are hard to break. I'm used to feeling like I have to earn my place." "You've more than earned your place here," Jake said. "This ranch runs better now than it ever has, and not just because of your work, because of you and your family." They walked out of the office together and stood in the yard between the main house and the cottage. The night was clear and warm, with a million stars visible in the dark sky. "Sarah," Jake said, "can I tell you something?" "Sure." Jake took a deep breath. "A year ago, I thought I had everything I wanted. A successful business, financial security, independence. But I was wrong. I was lonely, and I didn't even realize it." Sarah listened quietly. "When you and your children came here," Jake continued, "everything changed. This place became a home instead of just a house. I started looking forward to each day instead of just getting through it. You didn't just change my ranch. You changed my life." Sarah felt tears starting in her eyes. "Jake, I love you, Sarah," Jake said. "I love all of you. Emma and the twins and Sophia. They're like my own children now. And you're the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with." Sarah was quiet for so long that Jake started to worry he had said too much. "I love you too," Sarah finally whispered. "But I'm scared." "What are you scared of?" "I'm scared that this is too good to be true," Sarah said. "I'm scared that someday you'll realize you could do better than a single mother with 4 kids and no education." Jake stepped closer and took Sarah's hands. Sarah, you are the strongest, kindest, most amazing woman I've ever met. You raised 4 incredible children while working 3 jobs and never complained. You took a chance on a new life when it would have been easier to stay where you were. You are not settling for me. I'm the one who's lucky. Sarah looked into Jake's eyes and saw the truth there. He really did love her, not because he felt sorry for her, but because of who she was. What about the children? Sarah asked. This affects them too. Jake smiled. I already talked to Emma. She gave me her permission to tell you how I feel, and she told me that the other children would be happy too. You talked to Emma about this? She's very wise for 10 years old, Jake said. She wants her mother to be happy, and she thinks I make you happy. You do make me happy, Sarah said. Happier than I ever thought I could be. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Sarah's eyes widened. I know this might seem fast, Jake said, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Sarah Martinez, will you marry me? Will you let me be a real father to your children and a real husband to you? Sarah started crying then, happy tears that she could not stop. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Jake slipped the ring onto Sarah's finger. It was beautiful, but not too big or flashy. It was perfect for her. They heard cheering from the cottage porch and looked over to see 4 small faces pressed against the windows. The children had been watching the whole time. I think they approve, Jake laughed. Sarah and Jake walked hand in hand to the cottage where the children burst out the front door to hug them both. Are you going to be our real dad now? Sophia asked Jake. If that's what you want, Jake said, kneeling down to her level. Yes. All 4 children said at once. 6 months later, on a beautiful fall day, Sarah and Jake were married in the yard between the cottage and the main house. Emma was the maid of honor, and the twins were groomsmen. Sophia was the flower girl and took her job very seriously. The wedding was small but perfect. Mrs. Chen and Mr. Johnson came from Sarah's old neighborhood. Marge from the diner was there, along with Mrs. Patterson and many of the ranch workers, who had become like family. But the most important guests were Sarah's 4 children, who now had a father who loved them unconditionally. As Jake and Sarah exchanged vows, they promised to love and support each other and to create a family built on respect, kindness, and hope. They promised to give the children opportunities to grow and dream and become anything they wanted to be. After the ceremony, as they watched the children play in the yard with their new cousins from